My ex-boyfriend invited me to his wedding to show off his wealthy fiancée, but my plus one turned the tables in the most unexpected way. Dylan, 30, male, and I, 22, female, met while we used to work part-time at Starbucks. I was still in college at that time and was saving money to move out of my parents' house permanently while he was paying off his student loans. His parents had a lot of debts due to their gambling habits and were unable to support him financially. Initially, we bonded over discussing our families, but eventually we realized that we genuinely enjoyed spending time together. After graduating 2 years later, I had saved up enough money to move out and live on my own. Dylan, on the other hand, was still struggling with his student loans and had been struggling for a long time to move out of his parents' house, so I offered him to move in with me. But unfortunately, because of the debt, he couldn't even cover his part of the rent. I decided to cover 80% of the total rent, so he would only have to pay the remaining 20%, and he readily agreed. Other than rent, we split the utility bills equally. Though Dylan and I had different jobs, his job was more hands-on, requiring him to be on site for long hours while I had a corporate job with a more relaxed schedule. My boss is not concerned about whether we work from the office or from home, as long as we meet our targets every month. Dylan's work schedule often prevented him from helping me around the house. As a result, I had to take care of the dishes, laundry, cleaning, and cooking. I didn't mind doing all of it since I understood how demanding his job was. However, I did ask him to take out the trash since he was always the last one to eat between us. Unfortunately, Dylan would always forget to do it, leaving me to take out the trash every morning. I remember once when I had to leave for work during the weekend when I returned home, I found our entire place in disarray. The kitchen counter was a mess with overflowing dishes, empty food packets, and chocolate wrappers strewn all over. The laundry had piled up, and the trash had not been taken out. As you can imagine, I was beyond pissed. After a long day at work, I was exhausted and just wanted to rest. However, when I looked around the house, I couldn't relax knowing how messy it was. I spent the whole day cleaning up, hoping Dylan would notice and appreciate my efforts. When he finally arrived home, he greeted me with a hug and told me how much he missed me. But he didn't even seem to notice the difference in the house. He immediately sat down to watch his game, leaving me feeling unappreciated and frustrated. I burst into tears. I don't know if it was the tiredness, the sleeplessness, or his lack of appreciation for me, but I realized for the first time how little he thought of me. He glanced back and asked if something was wrong, but I shook my head, pretending to be fine, telling him that I was ready to go to bed. Before going, I reminded him once again to take out the trash, and he nodded in response. But as you can probably guess, the next morning the trash was still there. I lost my temper when he came down to the kitchen and asked me for breakfast. I told him that he could cook for himself if he wanted to eat something. He said that I was being rude, and this is when I started yelling at him about how useless he was around the house. He blinked, as if he hadn't done anything wrong, and asked me not to be so overdramatic. I took a deep breath and asked him why he never took the trash out. He told me that he forgot to do it. I then asked him what he does around the house, besides coming back home and sitting in front of the TV with a beer. He started to say how he was always tired after work and that he deserved to have his time. I nodded and agreed with his statements that he definitely needs his time to relax. But what about me then? I reminded him that after work, I come back home and start cooking for both of us. I clean the house, do our laundry, iron his shirts for the week, and the only thing I expect from him is to take out the trash. Dylan then told me that he never asked me to do any of these things. He continued to say that he had a very challenging job, and he thought as his girlfriend, I should understand that I needed to help him out. He even tried to justify that doing these things was not a big deal, as his mother did the same thing for his father. When I heard this, it really made me angry. I realized that despite working so hard around the house, I was letting him walk all over me, even though we weren't even married. I looked straight at him and told him that I wasn't going to do anything around the house to help him out. I was not his mother, and we were equals. I told him he needed to cook his own food, do his laundry, iron his shirts, take out his garbage, and clean up after himself. Dylan's eyes widened, and he started to protest, but I held up a hand to make him stop. I told him that there was more to it. He also needed to pay 50% of the rent or move out. Dylan was shocked and asked me where this was coming from. I told him that I was tired of working so hard for him and not feeling appreciated. He obviously wanted to say more, but I walked out of the house as I was running late for work. This was the first time in my life I had ever set such strong boundaries, but I didn't feel guilty about it. I kept my word and only cleaned up after myself, not doing anything extra. It was satisfying to watch him run around the house trying to find clean clothes or iron his shirts before work. He didn't clean the utensils or take out his trash, hoping I would do it for him, but I refused to do it. Even when the dishes started to pile up and smell, I decided to eat from takeout boxes so I could easily dispose of my garbage without going into the kitchen. He tried to talk to me several times, insisting that I should be a good partner and take care of him, but I stayed firm and unyielding to his demands. When it was time to pay rent, I paid 50% of the amount to our landlord and informed her that Dylan would be paying the remaining 50%. He tried to come back home and argue with me, yelling that I should pay 80% like before, but I refused. I reminded him that he never appreciated me when I did so. I was done helping him out. He tried to make excuses, but eventually he had to pay his share of the rent to the landlord. Throughout all of this, he never once apologized to me. He never sat down with me and expressed any regret for not appreciating the work I did around the house. It was disappointing that he never acknowledged that I was right about the situation. Looking back, I regret not seeing him for who he truly was sooner. As you can guess, over the next few months, our fights kept getting worse and worse, with him blaming me for everything and trying to gaslight me to go back to my old ways. I got a promotion at work, and that seemed to be the last straw for Dylan. One of our mutual friends, who's also my coworker, must have told Dylan about this because that night was the worst fight in our relationship. Dylan came back home drunk and woke me up, yelling at me that he needed to talk to me. He had a bad hangover from celebrating with my friends that night, so I asked him if we could talk tomorrow. However, he kept insisting that he wanted to tell me something important. Groggy and annoyed, I sat up in bed just to shut him up and asked him what was so important to wake me up in the middle of the night. This is when Dylan started to tell me drunkenly how he had met someone at work. I knew of the woman he was talking about because I had seen her during one of his office parties when he had taken me with him. Her name was Bella, and she was only years old. She was the daughter of an industrialist and was clearly very rich. The only reason she even worked was because her dad kept insisting that she needed work experience. Dylan continued to say how he was falling in love with her because, according to him, she was a real woman, unlike me. I looked at him without any emotions, as I honestly didn't care or feel bad hearing this, as I should have. I knew our relationship was dying anyway, and we were pretty much roommates at this point. He continued to speak about this relationship, but I stopped him mid-sentence. I told Dylan that, honestly, I didn't care about him seeing another woman, and that I was happy for him. I suggested that we break up amicably, and he could move out of our place as soon as possible. Dylan looked at me, his brow furrowed, and asked if I was jealous of this new girl. I smiled and shook my head, telling him that I was glad he found someone because now I would not feel guilty to break up with him. Dylan became angry at hearing this and his face changed color. He asked if my new promotion at work was the reason behind my confidence. I told him that my promotion had nothing to do with our relationship, as I had realized over the past few months that we were not compatible with each other anymore. I explained how we had pretty much become more like roommates rather than romantic partners, hence, I understood why he wanted to see someone else. I thought Dylan would be happy to hear me say this, but instead, he started yelling at me, saying he hated modern women like me who flaunt their careers. According to him, Bella was a much better woman because all she wanted was to get married and have children. Despite his yelling, I kept my calm and reminded him that every woman has different needs. Bella clearly came from an affluent family, hence, she might not care as much as me about her career, but I liked my career. I also told him that if he wanted a woman like Bella, he should be with her. I told him that we should not argue about this further, and that he could move out of our place as soon as he could. His eyes widened, and he asked me how I could afford to pay rent. I explained to him that I had received a raise in my salary, and that I was now capable of paying the entire rent without having any roommates. Hearing this, he began to shout, telling me that I was trying to show off and in front of him. He told me how Bella was richer than me and even had her own house, which her father had bought for her. He kept yelling that I needed to change myself and become more complacent. He then sneered at me, saying that, at the end of the day, men wanted a housewife and not a woman who could earn more than them. At this point, I asked him to shut up as I was tired of arguing with him in the middle of the night. I told him he had until the end of the month to move out, and until then, he could sleep on the couch. I could hear him still grumbling, but I ignored him and went back to sleep. Fortunately, over the week, Dylan started to pack and slowly move out his things. I was starting to get excited thinking about the prospect of finally having this entire place all for my own. On his last night, when I came back home, I was shocked to see Dylan and Bella sitting on our couch. I looked at him curiously, and he informed me that because this was his last night at this place, he wanted to show Bella where he lived. I couldn't believe the audacity he had to bring another woman into this place without asking me, knowing that I was going to be back. I didn't want to be rude to Bella, as I thought this wasn't her fault, so I shouldn't be rude to a guest. I politely greeted her, but to my surprise, she looked at me with contempt and didn't even bother to acknowledge my presence. I decided not to take it personally and went to freshen up. Later, while I was cooking pasta for myself in the kitchen, Bella came to get some water. She stood there watching me for a minute, which made me feel awkward. I asked her if there was something she wanted, but she gave me the same contemptuous look as before. I decided to ignore her presence and continue to cook so I could take the meal back to the bedroom and eat in peace. After I was done eating, as I was about to come downstairs, I overheard Dylan and Bella talking. Bella was telling Dylan how lucky he was to have upgraded himself after dating someone who looked like me. I froze in shock as I heard Dylan laughing and agreeing with her. Bella then asked him why he ever fell in love with me, and that's when Dylan said something that completely shattered me. He confessed that he had used me because I was gullible enough to pay for our dates when we went out and used to lend him money during college. He even revealed that I had paid more than half of the rent for the last couple of years, which allowed him to save a lot of money. I could not believe what I had just heard. I had always suspected that he might have used my good nature to pay more than half his rent, but I had no idea he had been using me since the very beginning. Bella and he then continued to talk about our relationship and basically made fun of me in every way. I was going to burst out in tears because of how humiliated I felt, but I didn't want to let them see me in this state. So I quietly headed back upstairs and spent the rest of the night quietly crying into my pillow. The next morning when I woke up, Dylan and Bella were gone. He had taken the last of his things and had officially moved out. I walked around the house in the daze, and I knew that I was finally free from him. I cannot begin to describe how light I felt knowing that he was finally gone from my life and this house. I cried joys of happiness and danced around the house. Then I set about cleaning the entire place so that there would be no reminder of him anywhere. Over the next few weeks, I have thoroughly enjoyed living on my own. I had stopped caring about what Dylan and Bella had spoken about me. All was going well until 2 months later, when our mutual friend informed me at work that Dylan was getting married to Bella. I was taken aback because it all seemed too sudden. Our friend showed me their engagement pictures, and they appeared to be very happy together. While I felt a slight pang of sadness for how Dylan had used me all these years, I also recognized I would have never been satisfied with him anyway. Therefore, I was pleased that he had found someone who could make him happy. That same night, when I came back home and checked my mailbox, I found an unexpected wedding invitation. My eyes widened in shock as I realized it was from Dylan and Bella. I was starting to think it was maybe a mistake, or he had invited me just as a courtesy until I opened the invitation and saw that he had scribbled something in the written inside the card was this: "I want you to attend my wedding, so you can see the grand life I'm going to have with Bella." It slowly sunk in that he had invited me only in the hopes of showing off his marriage, his rich partner, and his newfound wealth. I took a deep breath, trying to understand why he would even send an invitation like this to me when all I had done was take care of him over the years. All the years of anger and frustration I had pent up inside kept boiling out, and I knew that I had to get petty with him. I RSVP'd yes with a +1. I had a plan forming in my head and was determined to make Dylan regret ever inviting me. I opened up my laptop and began scrolling through Bella's social media profiles. I scanned each and every social media picture that she had ever posted. As luck would have it, I finally found what I was looking for. Just 6 months ago, Bella had broken up with her ex-boyfriend, Jake. She had several posts with him, and their pictures dated back to high school, which meant they had clearly been together for a very long time. I sent a friend request to Jake from my profile, and when he accepted, I sent him a message. To my surprise, he responded, and we started talking. I was upfront with him about my identity as Dylan's ex and told him about my plan to invite him as my +1 to their wedding. He seemed intrigued and curious as to why I was reaching out to him, but I explained everything to him. Over the next few weeks, Jake opened up about how Bella had cheated on him multiple times, and her latest affair had been with Dylan. This was news to me because I had no idea about this. He continued to reveal how Bella was always into older men. Hence, he wasn't surprised much when she announced that she was in love with Dylan while they were still dating. As you can imagine, they had a pretty bad breakup, and he had blocked her from everywhere despite her telling him that they should remain friends. From the way he talked about Bella, it seemed like he was still in love with her. I also told Jake about my own experience with Dylan and how he had used me for all those years. I poured my heart out to him, describing everything that Dylan had put me through and how Bella and Dylan had made fun of me. Jake was shocked to hear about the way Dylan had treated me and spoken about me. After hearing everything, Jake finally agreed to accompany me. I felt excited, thinking of the look on my ex and Bella's faces when they saw me attend their wedding with Jake. On the day of the wedding, as expected, Dylan's eyes widened when he saw me walking in with my special guest. He must have immediately recognized Jake as Bella's ex. We ignored his expressions and our designated seats. Dylan came up to me and angrily whispered, asking why I was here with Bella's ex, but I simply smiled. He could not make a scene in front of everyone and had to begrudgingly walk back up to the aisle, eyeing me angrily. When it was time for the bride to make her entrance, everyone stood up from their seats. Bella looked stunning in her white floor-length gown as she walked down the aisle with her father by her side. The ceremony went smoothly, and the celebrations moved to the reception area. Bella must have gone to change because she was wearing a different dress when she entered the area. Bella had not noticed me or Jake yet. When she suddenly saw Jake seated next to me, she froze in her tracks. Bella turned to look at me and then looked at him, perhaps still confused. She asked Jake what he was doing with me. I smiled and told her that I had invited him as a guest so we could show our support for her marriage. She looked enraged and asked Jake if we were dating now. Jake remained silent because this was a ridiculous question to ask anyway, and Bella's face began turning red with anger. Jake asked her if he could speak with her privately, as he didn't want her to cause a scene, and she nodded solemnly, throwing me a nasty glance. They walked out, and I turned to look at Dylan, watching our interaction with hawk eyes. Though Dylan seemed concerned, he couldn't do much as he had to sit there pretending that everything was okay. The party continued, and everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. But an hour had passed, and the bride was nowhere to be found. Several guests started to notice and whisper among themselves. Bella's dad started to look concerned and asked one of the bridesmaids to go and check on her. A minute later, the bridesmaid came running, holding a note in her hands. She announced in front of everyone that Bella had run away with her ex-boyfriend. Everyone stood there shocked. The bridesmaid continued to read the note where Bella had admitted that seeing Jake had brought back all her lingering feelings and she had made a huge mistake marrying Dylan. The revelation stunned the guests further, leaving Dylan standing there, humiliated and exposed. I was also quite shocked, as, although I had brought Jake as my +1 to piss Dylan off, I would never have imagined that things would turn out this way. Dylan looked like he was ready to tear someone's head off. Bella's parents politely requested everyone to take leave and profusely apologized for what had happened. I watched as Dylan, once proud and boastful, stood there alone, completely taken aback by Bella's decision. Since the wedding, I do feel a bit guilty. But at the same time, I can't help but feel satisfied that Dylan's attempt to humiliate me had backfired spectacularly. The event meant to showcase his triumph over me had become the stage for his downfall. ITA for taking a special guest with me as a +1 and ruining my ex's wedding. I have been receiving mixed reactions to my post. Since I posted my story, while a lot of you agree that I did the right thing, some of you think I went a little too far. I have to clarify that it was never my intention to break my ex's wedding, nor did it ever come up in my conversation with Jake. I have no idea what Bella and Jake talked about privately for Bella to break off the wedding so quickly. I simply wanted to be petty with my ex, as he had invited me in the first place with the hope of showing off marrying a rich partner like Bella. I had nothing to do with Bella coming to the decision to leave her marriage. I have texted Jake asking him about what happened, so I will update next when he replies. Update 2. Jake reached out to me. He sent me a long text yesterday, which basically said how grateful he was that I took him to the wedding. He told me that he and Bella had gone on the honeymoon that she was supposed to take with Dylan. They had talked to her parents also, as they were really worried about her. He informed me that he would be meeting with me and clarifying everything very soon in person. Meanwhile, Dylan had been trying to reach me nonstop since the wedding. He had called me multiple times as well as sent me nasty text messages blaming me for the end of his marriage. I never replied to him, nor did I have any interest in engaging with him. I knew that I had nothing to do with Bella and Jake running away together. Today, Dylan decided to show up at my doorstep, knowing that I would be home during the weekend. At first, I refused to open the door and asked him to leave. He kept yelling that he wasn't going until he talked to me. I opened the door a crack and told him that he wasn't allowed inside my house, so he could say whatever he wanted to me standing outside my door. Dylan started yelling at me that I had completely ruined his life. Apparently, he had given his notice at work already, thinking that he would never have to go back to work after getting married to someone as rich as Bella. He angrily asked me why I ever brought Jake to their wedding. I was starting to get pissed about him blaming me, so I decided to reveal to him that I had heard everything that night that he talked with Bella. His eyes widened in shock as I told him that I knew he had used me all along to cover his rent as well as pay for our dates for all the years we dated. I told him I did all those things because I loved him, but he clearly had no respect for me. I told him that even when he cheated on me with Bella, I didn't make it a big deal. Nor did I ever interfere in his relationship. It was only when he invited me to their wedding and wanted to flaunt in front of me about the life he was going to live with his rich partner that really took me over the edge. I told him that he had no right to come to my place and yell at me for something that I wasn't responsible for. Bella was an adult and had chosen to leave him, so he should be angry at her. Hearing this, Dylan started to yell back that it wasn't his fault, that I was so naive enough, that I couldn't see how he was using me for those years, and that I shouldn't punish him for the past. I scoffed, hearing this, while he continued to tell me how Bella was supposed to change his life, and he could have had everything in his life. Finally, he revealed how he had worked so hard to flirt and seduce Bella, but I had ruined his chance. At this point, his words were so despicable that I didn't want to hear them anymore, so I asked him to leave my property. Otherwise, I would call the police. He told me that I would never dare to do that, so I whipped out my phone to dial in front of his face. He immediately took a few steps back and told me not to overreact as he was going to leave. I shut the door, promising myself that this would be the last time I would ever see him. Since then, I have blocked him from everywhere and informed my family about this incident. I plan on changing my house locks, as well as installing a camera on my door, so that the next time he returns, I can record his behavior and file an official complaint against him. Update 3. It's been a month since my last update. I've been very busy with my work and didn't have time to give an update to everyone sending me 100 messages, questioning if Jake and I ever met. I'm happy to report that we finally did. Jake had invited me for lunch a week ago, telling me that he was ready to talk to me. When I reached the venue, I saw Bella sitting next to him. I immediately braced myself, thinking that she was here to start another fight with me, but to my surprise, when she saw me, she smiled politely and warmly greeted me. I was a bit unsure of what she was doing here, but Jake assured me that she was here just to apologize. Bella nodded and profusely apologized for how she had spoken to me in the past. She then went on to tell me her story with Dylan. She revealed to me how Dylan would always be nice to her at work and give her a lot of attention because of their long work schedule. They spent a lot of time together where Dylan would always complain about me and our relationship. He would say how unhappy he was and that he wished he had a better-looking girl like Bella. She started to sympathize with him and felt flattered every time he complimented her. When she and Jake were going through a rough patch, she got carried away with her feelings and hooked up once with Dylan. After that, Dylan had convinced her to break up with Jake, telling her that Jake was not good enough for her. Dylan would continuously send her messages about how she was perfect for him and that they could have a life together. She felt guilty for cheating on Jake and hence eventually broke up with him. She thought she could be happy with Dylan despite their apparent age difference. Bella then explained how when she saw me, she was insecure at how independent I was and felt jealous that I didn't really need a man to take care of me. She apologized for hurting my feelings. I understood where she was coming from and went on to tell her how hard I had worked all my life to reach this position at work. She nodded solemnly with her eyes down. I then asked her to explain to me about what had happened during her wedding with Dylan. She then revealed that when I brought Jake to the wedding, she was shocked to see him. She realized, looking at his face, just how much she was still in love with him and never felt the same way for Dylan. Jake told me that when they had privately discussed this during the wedding, they realized that they both felt the same way for each other. Hence, they decided to run away together after Bella left a note for her family. They have been together since that day and were very much in love. I was also informed that she had talked with her parents about this, and although they were very angry at first, they had decided to support her. She was going to file for an annulment with Dylan very soon. Hearing this, although it didn't entirely sit right with me, I was satisfied that at least two people were happy after the disastrous events. I could see how happy Bella and Jake looked at each other. We had our lunch, talked some more, and eventually left. Since that conversation, I haven't talked with either of them much, nor do I want to be a part of their drama. I plan on focusing on myself and continuing to work hard at my job. I don't know what will happen with Dylan, but I hope that he can eventually learn from his mistakes and not chase after partners for money in the future.